Speaker.
Dr. Megan Woods.
Mr Speaker, kia ora koutou, and thank you for the chance to speak in this debate. Like my colleagues, I'd like to acknowledge the Honourable Shane Jones, who is in the gallery, and to thank from the bottom of my heart the Pacific delegation for coming to our Parliament. I have never heard so many people talk about climate change in this House. It is indeed, as Labour's spokesperson for climate change, a very happy day for me. It seems that my portfolio is one that everyone wants to discuss today, because along with my colleague Sua Williams-Seal, we within Labour, we address the issue of what New Zealand needs to do on the issue of climate change, both here in New Zealand, in the Pacific, and in terms of our international responsibilities. And Mr Speaker, I know that Sua spoke earlier about his journey around the Pacific earlier this year and what he saw firsthand, that climate change isn't theoretical in the Pacific, it's everyday lived reality, and that we have to do more. That John Kerry this morning, in the middle of the next wave of the Paris arrangements, talked about not taking leadership on climate change being moral failure. And Mr Speaker, if New Zealand wants to assert its leadership role in the Pacific, it has a moral obligation to take a firm stand on climate change. That this is our job. I do not think our current action on climate change is enough. I don't think it's the kind of moral leadership that we need to be showing to the world in addressing what is the most pressing issue of our time, the survival of parts of our region. Mr Speaker, we tabled at the Paris conference last year an intention to decrease our global emissions 11% below 1990 levels. This will not get us to limiting temperature increase to 1.5%. This will see temperatures in our world rise 2 to 3 degrees, and the Pacific simply cannot withstand that kind of temperature increase. It is not sustainable, and it is not something that we can do. New Zealand needs to do more. But Mr Speaker, I enjoyed, like my colleagues on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, we do actually let one woman on that committee in this country, and I did agree and I did enjoy the talk that we had with members of the delegation this morning around issues around climate change in the Pacific. And I note that one of the issues that this motion is addressing is security in the Pacific, and climate change goes straight to the heart of the continued security in the Pacific in the 21st century. We know we're already seeing droughts in part of the Pacific. While Sua couldn't get out because of rain, only a very short distance away, the drought was going on. We talked about salination only being a problem on islands when there isn't enough rain to flush it away. We know that the issue of drought is going to be an ongoing issue. We also talked about the need for there to be technical expertise available, and I think this was one of the interesting parts of our discussion this morning. Technical expertise around the kinds of crops that are more drought resistant, that could be grown as the climate does change in some of these places. Technical expertise in terms of addressing many of the issues. But as Sua often reminds me, that some of the technical expertise that we're seeing in terms of adapting to climate change, New Zealand needs to learn from the Pacific. That you're on the front line already and that it is being dealt with. And I know that Sua came back very strongly with that as a message to our caucus, that there is much for us to learn. We need to think about the aid that we give in terms of climate change. We need to think about the best way that we can serve our region. Is this into big multilateral funds, which we know that Pacific nations struggle to be able to get money out of, or is it through bilateral aid that is about adapting to the ravages of climate change in your homes? And Mr Speaker, they're all things as parliamentarians, if we are going to take climate change seriously, we need to grapple with. Because I disagree with the previous speaker from the National Party who said that your future was solely in your hands. We have a part to play, we have a responsibility, and it is our moral obligation to do more to combat climate change.
Mr. Speaker.
Gareth Hughes.